The Grumman F-6F Hellcat, Bureau number 58139, was a wreck. It sat on the rain-slicked pierced steel planking of the forward airfield at Islito, Saipan, a monument to violent overuse. The skin of the fuselage and wings was a patchwork of shiny new aluminum and dull, painted-over steel where armorers and ground crews had patched more holes than anyone cared to count. One of its 3 propeller blades was badly nicked. The hydraulic system was temperamental, the radios worked only intermittently, and the engine, after 180 combat hours, had a vibration that no amount of tuning could completely erase. To the maintenance chiefs of Fighting Squadron 27, VF-27, attached to the light carrier USS Princeton, it was a hangar queen, a parts donor. Its official status was on condition, F2, which in the stark bureaucratic language of the U.S. Navy meant it was unfit for combat. It was, in every practical sense, written off. Its pilot, however, had other plans. Lieutenant J.G. Kenneth A. Ken Walsh was a 24-year-old Marine Corps aviator flying with a Navy squadron, an arrangement born of necessity and his own aggressive talent. He was compact, with a focused intensity that burned behind his eyes. He already had 12 confirmed kills painted on the side of his previous Hellcat, a score that made him an ace. But that aircraft was now at the bottom of the Pacific, and the squadron's supply of fresh, new F-6 F-5s was thin. On the morning of October 15, 1944, as the pre-dawn gray seeped into the sky over Saipan, Walsh walked the flight line with his crew chief, Aviation Chief Machinist's mate Gino Caraselli. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth, aviation fuel, and tension. The battle for Leyte Gulf was imminent, and intelligence pointed to a massive, desperate Japanese counterstroke from their airfields in the Philippines. Every flyable fighter was needed for Combat Air Patrol, CAP, over the fleet. Walsh stopped in front of 58,139. "She's a mess, Lieutenant," Caraselli said, wiping his hands on an oily rag. "Port mag's rough, the trim tab's binding, and I wouldn't trust the flaps to come down on a bet. We're cannibalizing her for the starboard gear actuator today." Walsh walked around the aircraft, his hand trailing over the cold, damp skin. He knew every patch, every imperfection. He'd flown this specific Hellcat on 3 previous missions, bringing it back each time with damage that should have grounded it forever. There was a superstition among pilots about machines. Some were charmed, most were not. Walsh felt this one had fight left in it. It was a mongrel, a survivor. "Gino," Walsh said, his voice quiet. "Get her ready. Fuel, oil, ammo. Just make her fly and shoot. I don't need flaps. I don't need a radio. I just need her to get upstairs and point where I look." Caraselli, a man who had seen pilots do brave and stupid things in equal measure, nodded slowly. Aye, Lieutenant, she'll fly. Can't promise she'll come back." "She will," Walsh said, and it was not a hope, but an order to himself, to the machine, to the fates. By 700, Walsh was in the cockpit of the resurrected Hellcat, the engine coughing to life with a familiar, grumbling complaint. He ran up the power, felt the vibration in the airframe, noted the slightly off-center pull, and decided it was within his tolerance. He was leading a 4-plane division on a CAP station west of Luzon, assigned to protect the vulnerable troop transports and escort carriers of the invasion fleet. As he lifted off the rough strip, the Hellcat felt heavy, sluggish, but once in the air it responded. The controls, while not crisp, were honest. The 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns in the wings, the only systems that worked perfectly, cycled with a satisfying dry clatter. He climbed to 18,000 feet, his wingmen, younger pilots in newer planes, forming up around him. The sky was a vast, empty blue bowl, dotted with puffy cumulus. The call came from the radar picket destroyer USS Claxton at 7:25. Vector 290, Angels 12, bogies, many bogies. Inbound. The voice was tight. Many in this context meant a swarm. Walsh acknowledged with a double click of his malfunctioning radio and banked his division toward the intercept. Within minutes, the empty sky ahead populated. A formation of HID-3A Val dive bombers, slow and vulnerable, escorted by a swirling cloud of perhaps 30 Mitsubishi A6M Zeros. But below and ahead of the main formation, Walsh's sharp eyes picked out a separate, more sinister group. A dedicated Kamikaze unit of bomb-laden Zeros, flying lower and faster, intent on a one-way trip into the heart of the American fleet. The priority was clear: stop the suiciders. Walsh signaled the attack with a sharp hand gesture. He led his division down in a screaming dive, converting altitude into speed, aiming to slash through the Kamikaze group before they could reach the fleet. The Zeros, seeing the attack, broke formation to intercept. What followed was not a classic turning dogfight. It was a violent, high-speed melee, a knife fight in a phone booth conducted at over 300 knots. Walsh's first kill was almost procedural. A Zero pulled up in front of him, presenting a perfect deflection shot. He pressed the trigger. His 6 guns roared, a sound he felt in his teeth. A 2-second burst saw the Zero's center section disintegrate. It flicked into a spin, trailing fuel and flame. Walsh didn't watch it fall. He was already searching for the next threat. His written-off Hellcat was suddenly an extension of his nervous system. Its flaws became advantages. The stiff controls required more force, making his inputs more deliberate, less jerky. The vibrating engine seemed to settle into a rhythm that matched his own adrenaline. He fought with an economy of motion that was terrifying to behold. He didn't outturn the nimble Zeros, he outthought them. He used the Hellcat's superior diving speed and rugged construction in a series of slashing, hit-and-run attacks. He would dive on a Zero, fire a quick burst, and use his momentum to extend away before its wingman could bracket him, then zoom climb back into the fight. The second kill came as a Zero tried to get on his tail. Walsh executed a high-speed barrel roll, a maneuver that stressed his already weary airframe and ended up behind his pursuer. A short burst into the engine and cockpit sent the Zero spiraling down. His wingmen were fully engaged, fighting for their own lives. Walsh was alone in a sky full of enemies. The next few minutes were a blur of controlled violence. He caught a Zero lining up on a fellow Hellcat, burned it from the sky with a sustained burst that emptied a quarter of his ammunition. He chased another that was diving toward a transport, catching it just as it began its final run. His fire shattered its cockpit and it cartwheeled into the sea short of its target. The tally was now 4. His aircraft was taking hits. He felt rounds slam into his wing root and tail. The engine temperature began to creep up and the vibration worsened. The instrument panel was a confusing array of flickering dials. He ignored it all. There was only the geometry of the fight, the enemy in his gun sight, the fleet below. His 5th kill was the most difficult. A skilled Zero pilot latched onto his tail and stayed there through a series of desperate, energy-sapping turns. Walsh could not shake him. He could hear the thump-thump-thump of the Zero's 20 cannons firing, feel the impacts as shells walked closer to his cockpit. In that moment, facing the very real prospect of death in a condemned aircraft, Walsh's mind became preternaturally clear. He saw a thin layer of cloud below. He rolled his battered Hellcat onto its back and pulled the stick hard into his stomach, entering an inverted dive. The G-force pushed him down into his seat, his vision tunneling. The Zero pilot, surprised, tried to follow but lost sight. Walsh plunged into the cloud, counted to 3 and pulled out, leveling off just above the waves. He had lost his pursuer. As he climbed back toward the fray, he saw a lone Zero, perhaps low on fuel or disoriented, flying straight and level. He closed from below and behind, a classic blind spot attack, and with a final, almost dismissive burst, sent it into the water. That was 6. 15 minutes had passed since the first contact. His ammunition was nearly exhausted. His engine was billowing a thin trail of smoke. Fuel was critical. The remaining Japanese aircraft, their kamikaze mission thwarted and their escort decimated, were dispersing. Walsh gathered his remaining wingmen. 2 of the 4 were gone and turned for the fleet. The flight back was a test of will. The Hellcat wanted to die. The controls were sloppy, the engine misfiring. He could see the fleet, a scattering of gray specks on the horizon, but it seemed to recede with every labored mile. He keyed his radio, got only static. He was a ghost, flying a ghost, trying to find home. He managed to limp over the destroyer screen. He saw the tiny, precious shape of the USS Princeton. He had no flaps, no reliable speed indicator, and a failing engine. A normal carrier landing was impossible. He waggled his wings in the universal signal of distress and pointed the nose of the dying Hellcat toward the nearest large deck he could see, the escort carrier USS Kamikaze. He received a frantic wave-off. His approach was too fast, too unstable, but he had no choice. He chopped the throttle and felt the engine shudder. The Hellcat hit the deck with a jarring, screeching impact that felt like it would break the aircraft in half. The tailhook caught a wire, and he was jerked to a violent stop. He sat in the sudden silence, the only sounds the pinging of cooling metal and the hiss of steam from a ruptured line. When he climbed out, his legs shaky, the deck crew stared at the aircraft in horror. It was holed in 24 places, hydraulic fluid and oil pooled beneath it. One of the .50 caliber guns was bent at a grotesque angle. A young ordnanceman walked up to Walsh, his eyes wide. "Sir, what in the hell did you do to this plane?" Weeks later, after the battle was won and the paperwork caught up, the mechanics at Asleto finally performed a full assessment of Hellcat 58139. The report was a litany of terminal failures. It was stricken from the record and pushed overboard. But before it was consigned to the deep, Ken Walsh made sure one final notation was added to its logbook. Next to the F2 status, someone had scrawled in grease pencil, 6 zeros, 15 mins, 15 oct 44. Ken Walsh would finish the war with 21 confirmed aerial victories, the second highest scoring Marine Corps ace of World War II. He would receive the Medal of Honor for his actions that day. But the legend that clung to him was not just about the number or the medal. It was about the profound, almost mystical bond between a pilot and his machine in the crucible of combat. It was a testament to the idea that a weapon is never truly obsolete, a machine never fully written off, as long as the human spirit willing it into battle refuses to accept the verdict. The Navy saw a collection of broken parts. Ken Walsh, in 15 of the most intense minutes of his life, saw a kamikaze killer. And because he believed it, so did the 6 pilots who met it in the sky over Leyte Gulf, and learned too late that some planes, like some men, are at their most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose.